All right, so we're here to discuss the 4-year anniversary of the Rock Band franchise, which is coming up on November 20th.
Wow, Rock
4
Band.
years.
4 years of Rock Band.
Can you fathom that the franchise has been kept relevant for 4 years with weekly DLC, 3 main Rock Band titles, Beatles Rock Band, Green Day Rock Band?
Wow. Yeah. God, it's been 4 years. Well, I think it's weird because it's like we we worked on Rock Band for like for several years before it actually came out. So yeah, so it's more like 6 years probably.
Were you working on Rock Band from the beginning, or were you on a different project?
So at the beginning of Rock Band, I was actually on a different project. So we had like another prototype like initiative going on that actually stuff that we learned from that actually evolved into some of the other games that we've made like over time. But so that was kind of finally we worked on that for almost a year, and then we kind of like put it on the shelf. And after that, I kind of hopped over to Rock Band, and so I helped do some of the motion capture stuff. I've done motion capture on a lot of our earlier titles, and so I helped out a little bit with that. And then I did a bunch of. I was basically like the internet guy. So I started up rockband.com and kind of like hired a team and got that off the ground. We were really anxious to sort of like make this game, but then have it sort of like extend out into real life. And so one of the ideas I had was like, it'd be really cool to be able to like take your band and this like virtual band, but then sort of make like real world stuff to sort of celebrate your band. So it's like, what if you could make a t-shirt and wear it of your fake band, or what if you could print out your own sort of like show flyer for your fake band, and then you could go hanging up around town, or you made like a bumper sticker, or you had a pin or whatever, and sort of like taking what I thought was like one of the most fun things of being in a band, like sort of controlling your image and doing sort of like press and like promotional stuff. I was like really psyched to sort of do that for these like virtual bands. So that was kind of a bad idea. So because it was just way harder to extract these like 3D models like out of the game and then sort of bring them to some sort of like web format, And so what we did was we actually had a pretty cool system where you could, for Rock Band 1 and 2, you could basically, if your account was, linked with a game, you could have your characters actually show up in a little window, and you could choose like a bunch of like backgrounds and different poses for them to be in. So you could kind of make like a cool like band photo that would be like, have all the. We spent a lot of time looking at that website that has like, it's like the worst band photos ever. It's like the guys against the brick wall, or guys, they're on the train, like standing on the train tracks and all that stuff. And so it was cool. You could like go load up all the stuff. You could it would bring in the name of your band, and you could like make this awesome image. Then you could send it over to a website that would like print it out for you. Make a poster, make a T-shirt, all this stuff. And so it was really cool, but it was so freaking hard to make that like by the end, we made a version, and then it was so hard to do like upkeep on it that we just had to like abandon it after a while, And along the same lines, there was another initiative to sort of do these like Rock Band figures, which are like really cool, but like, God, the amount of time and effort and blood and sweat and tears we spent on that was like, it was rough. There's one right there. So I love them. I think they're so cool, but it was just sort of like, at that time at Harmonix, I kind of felt like sort of like the idea was king, and then no one would ever be like, can we like afford to do this? Should we be doing this? It was sort of like, it was like Rock Band, there was just so much like energy around the idea of Rock Band that like we were just sort of doing everything. That's why that game is so huge. And so uh, it was kind of rare for someone to be like, no, 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 let's step back and really think about this. And we're like, no, let's keep doing it. Let's do more and more crazy stuff. And so that was probably one of the things we probably shouldn't have done for Rock Band. But I'm proud of it. I thought it came out really cool, but it's just a little outside of the scope of what our small company at the time could deal with.
What was Harmonix like right before the release of Rock Band? Was it were you excited to see how the game was going to do? Did you have any doubts, or did you predict it would be successful?
Well, I think at that time, we were pretty psyched because we saw like the last product that we made, Guitar Hero, was really starting to blow up at that point, and so I think that we were like, I was personally like a little scared because like, wow, we're asking people to buy like a ton of stuff, this is like, it's like, yeah, we got away with it in Guitar Hero by having them buy a guitar, but like drums and mic and blah, like, really, are people going to do this? And it's like, yeah, they did, which is awesome. But I really, from the early demos of Rock Band, it like blew me away. I was like, wow, this is really something that we've had in our heads like this entire time since I've started, but it's like now finally gelling, because I have like sketches somewhere. I have like a document somewhere that sort of like shows how like, hey, if we're doing this whole like multi-track audio thing, like what if we had little guys on stage instead, and there'd be like a guitar guy and a drummer and all that stuff, and it's like a half-written document that's like, yeah, this would be really cool, and then like, I don't know, it's like somewhere on my hard drive somewhere, but I think it's like we were all thinking that, and it just finally, once we sort of figured out like, oh yeah, like people actually like hardware, like they actually, this is going to be a new experience, where up to that point we were very like anti-hardware, because a lot of the other music games that were around when we were doing Frequency and Amplitude, they all required special hardware, and we just thought like, oh god, this is the wrong thing, so yeah, it was kind of like a big sort of mental shift for us as a company, but I'm glad we went there.
So let's talk about the hardware. In retrospect, or I guess even at the time, it was just a completely crazy undertaking. Like factories in China, people buying these bundles, $100+ bundles of plastic. How did it come about to put Daniel Sussman in charge of that?
Well, I mean, Daniel was, he has constantly proven himself since he started here. He started as, I think, he was the QA manager for Amplitude, and then he kind of just kept on rising up through the ranks, and then he was the project lead on Guitar Hero 2, and yeah, I think he had just had an interest in that sort of stuff, and I think he had come from another company that was sort of into manufacturing stuff, and he's a super smart guy, so it's like, yeah, go for it. Also at that point, like, we were just like, every week was like, oh my god, we got to do this, oh my god, we got to do that. Like, really, the website was like, oh, you know what, we need a website, and so I was doing all this other motion capture stuff, and then they're like, Josh, you want to do the website? I'm like, okay, and so I like hopped over and did the website, and so it was really like, we just kept on having these constant like surprises, like, oh, this game is going to require this whole thing, which we don't even have infrastructure for at all, and so we had to build all this stuff, and so, we were hiring people like crazy, and yeah, it was pretty wild time, definitely.
Pretty scrappy. Everyone sort of took on responsibilities
yeah.
otherwise wouldn't have been qualified side for?
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, I think everyone really sort of like everyone was really like stretched to the limits of their abilities, I think. But which is good because it really showed people like, in times like that can really pull it together.
So, in a way, it was a natural progression from Rock Band 1 and 2 to do Beatles Rock Band. I mean, it was crazy to make it happen, but it was like, what band would be worthy of their own game? Mm-hmm. What was it like for you to be the lead on that project?
What was it like for me to be the lead on the Beatles project? It was really, the Beatles project was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, definitely. And I think that a lot of it was just because I personally was just feeling the weight of like, such a well-respected, beloved, rich sort of history with this band that I wanted to get it right, and that was kind of the thing. I think the whole team shared that. It was like, we want to do this justice. We'll never have an opportunity like this again. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. We got to get it right. And so that was kind of like the mantra that kept driving us. But the problem with that is like that I think it just puts you in this mode of like just constant like self-sacrifice where you're just like, it's like, no, it's got to be better. It's got to be better. We got to, we got to try it again. We got to do, and just like, it was, I think I was like pretty hard on myself just to like make sure we did it right. And I think that probably like trickled down to the team where it was like, we were kind of operating a lot out of fear, honestly. Like we were really afraid that we were going to do something wrong and that they would get upset and then the project would fall apart, and so I think that because of that, it was just like a ton of long hours and like just a lot of sort of like living in fear, and not really knowing where we stood. Like we all thought what we were making looked cool, and I was the one that I would actually have to go and like kind of find out like, hey, are we doing a good job? I'd show it to Sir Paul or Ringo, and yeah, they'd like it, and that was like hugely gratifying. But at the same time, it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to do this again in a month. Like I'm gonna have to come back to these guys and show them in a month, and so it's like I could just barely catch my breath, and then like fly back from Abbey Road and like tell the team like, hey, yeah, everything's okay, and then like, but for next month we got to show them this, this, and this, and so let's hit it again,
Is it true that at any point in the project they could have been like, no, we don't want you to make this anymore?
I don't know. I think I made the mistake of feeling that like at any moment they would like pull the plug, where I think really like they liked what we were doing. They really did. And so, I think I probably could have like had a little bit more confidence. But I think that, it's just really hard to like be like, okay, here is a 3D depiction of how I think your life went, and I'm like, and it's like, I know nothing about you other than what I've read and watched, but I think this is you, and like, and luckily they're like, yeah, close enough,
Especially like the psychedelics.
Yeah, like, a lot of stuff, just sort of like, we just kind of had to go on instinct of like, all right, well, we think this is really cool, and we think this is sort of the vibe that they were going for, and we're kind of still playing with a lot of the ideas that the band had. Like, will we see eye to eye on this? Like, are we sort of true creative partners? And in the end, we were, so that was nice.
What was it like when Yoko came to the office?
There was 1 week where I was supposed to go meet with Sir Paul to talk more about the factoids. So like we had a meeting with Sir Paul, and we started. That was the first time that we showed him like the Beatles, trivia stuff, and he loved that. Like he got really psyched about it and was like, and he was with his son and his girlfriend, and he would read something like, "Oh yeah, in 1960 or whatever, the Beatles had two, number one hits, and he'd be like, "Oh, not too shabby for the old man, huh?" Like he's just really proud, and so, and I think that meeting was only supposed to be like half an hour long, but he was there for like an hour and a half, just like hanging out and talking, and so he shared some really really cool stories with us, and so I was planning on going back to show him the rest of the factoids with Chris Foster, who was the lead designer on the project. And then around that time, Yoko expressed that she wanted to come to the studio. So I was like, oh, cool. So, but then I was like, oh, do I, so we like arranged it so I didn't have to go to London, and instead I'd be like hanging out here. And so, so Yoko showed up, and we had like a whole day's worth of presentations where she'd sort of get to sit with each sort of team, and they get to present sort of what they're working on and stuff, and she sort of said up front, she's like, so excuse me if I'm blunt, but I don't have a lot of time, and that's just how I communicate with people. And I was like, okay. So so she came in, and I wanted to start off by showing something I was really proud of. So I wanted to show there is, in the game, we were working on Dear Prudence. And so Dear Prudence is this really beautiful, moving song. And so we were working on crafting some visuals that we thought would really sort of embrace the mood of that song. And so I was like, oh, I can't wait to show Yoko. I think she's going to really like it. And so what happened was we sort of showed how John was going to look in 3D. And then I was like, okay, and this is how he'll look in the game. And so I queued up this piece of footage where he was like walking through like a field of flowers. And I was like, what do you think? And she was like, oh, it's not right. It's not right. And I was having a hard time understanding. And then I think what it was is like we had just like really kind of quickly recorded him like walking, but it was like the walk wasn't really perfected, and it was kind of like a little weird. And she really picked up on something that I was just totally used to, and I was also in my mind, it's like, well, it's not going to ship like that, like him kind of like, like walking along. So I was hoping that she would just see the overall vibe, but she really locked in on, all day, she just locked in on details because she's an amazing artist, right? And she's a really visual thinker. And so she's like, why is he doing that, And I was like, well, let's go down and talk to the guy who's responsible for all the motion capture. And I was like, and we kind of like walked out of that room, and then we sat down with Horace, who was doing all the motion capture. And actually, it was really awesome because at that time, I think, out of all the models and animations and sort of all the effort that we were doing for the different guys in the band at that time, I think kind of John was like a little bit behind in progress-wise, and so like he looked okay, but he just didn't have the like spirit, and that's why we really welcomed Yoko to come to the studio. And so at one point we show him like performing on stage, and she's like, nope, that's not right. And so we just talked about like, okay, well, what is it, what are we missing from his spirit? What is it, and she was like, well, I think she pointed out like, like, look at him when he performs at, in the footage for Shea Stadium, right? So that's the first time that any band has ever performed for, what was it, like 50,000 people, right? So you watch that footage and like John is out there just looking down his nose at everyone, like doesn't give a care in the world. He's like so badass, right? And I was like, oh, I think I get it, and then I looked at what we had, and John's character was just sort of like mopey. And so I think like Horst kind of like looked at it and was like, all right, well, what if we just tilt his spine a bit? And all of a sudden just like brought him from this to like that. And she's like, that's it, and we're like, okay, now what else? Let's keep talking, And so it was really just awesome to have her there to like just help us with that, because we really, at the time, we were really just not getting it right, But I mean, she was like, she's just very blunt, and so it was it was that same thing where it's like, we really wanted to get it right, and we really wanted to make her happy, and then when she wasn't happy, I was just like, oh, I failed, but then she'd be like really serious, but then every artist that we went around to, she would actually like literally pat them on the back and be like, you're doing a great job, and this is really important. I just want to come here and express to you how important it is, but I think you're doing a great job, and on the way out, she, thanked me and gave me a hug, and it was awesome, and so it was really, I'm really glad, and I think she is too, that she like came here and like actually spent the time, because if she hadn't, I don't think it would have turned out as good,
So speaking of that, a lot of people have referred to the Beatles rock band and the games as art argument. Mm-hmm. They hold it as one of the really prime examples of how a game can be beautiful and be art. Mm-hmm. Has that been gratifying for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I totally think the Beatles rock band is a work of art. It's gorgeous, and it also does a thing that like all my favorite art does, which is like it makes you feel actual emotions. It's like it really makes you feel good to play it, and there's not a lot of games that I get those vibes from. I get a lot of like, I think most games I play, I'm like, yeah, I'm having fun, but like I don't ever get sort of like emotionally touched by games. It's like very rare, and if that happens, I'm like, oh my god, and so I'm super proud of that, that we were able to sort of like really tap into players like on an emotional level in that game. It's like, and it's just like the guys who did the art here are just so incredible that they nailed it, and I think the talent of the team here combined with the awesome music of the Beatles, yeah, it was magic.
How many times do you think you had to go over to England during Beatles Rock Band trips?
During Beatles Rock Band, I was just looking at my passport, and I think I went to like Abbey Road or just London in general, like about a dozen times, I think. It was about once a month for a while, yeah. Sometimes it was once every 2 weeks, but only for like 40 hours or something. I like go over, hang out, and then get back.
What was it like being in Abbey Road Studios?
Abbey Road Studios, God, it was pretty wild. Definitely, the first trip over there we screwed up. So what happened was, the first trip to Abbey Road, someone had the idea to like, let's fly a red eye to get over there, right? And so I was like, well, I don't really do well on red eyes. I don't sleep, And they're like, come on, we got to get over there. So I'm like, okay. So did the red eye, get to the hotel, and then one of the team calls me and it's like, okay, well, we have to be at Abbey Road in a half an hour. And I'm like, I haven't slept. I can't hear anything out of my ears because, flying messes with your hearing, And I'm like, all right, well, here we go, And so I like got to Abbey Road, and we met. That was the first time I met Giles Martin, and I must have just given the worst impression to him and everyone else there because I couldn't hear him. I was like falling asleep practically, and like I just kept on like pounding like coffee the entire day, but like it didn't help, and I was just like, and I think then I had my laptop, and I was using my iPod as like external storage or something, and then people were trying to figure out like, what's he doing with that? It was like really kind of conspicuous, like it's like, is he recording all this? What's going on? And it's just like, oh, I've blown it, already, day one I've blown it, but Abbey Road it's a really cool place, and I think just sort of, well, it's weird because the room that we were operating in was not like a famous like Beatles room or anything, but when you walk down the hallway, it's like kind of like all the gear that they used on those early sessions are just like sitting in the hallway, and so you can be like, like start fiddling about, with stuff, and I'm remixing the Beatles right now, and so and then those guys would be just sitting around while they're working on the multi-track. Was awesome because they'd be like, oh, have you ever heard this before? And they like solo something. It's be like, whoa, where did that come from? And then actually going into Studio 2, there was a promo thing that we did at the end of the project where we actually brought the game into Studio 2 and we played the game. And there's a moment where, in the game we have the guys in the band are sort of like just like talking. It's like them sort of like setting up or whatever, just talking in between takes and stuff. And so that was actually playing out of speakers in Studio 2, and I just like sat back and was like, whoa, are they here? Like they're here, kind of, and it was like really, it was pretty kind of haunting, but also this pretty magical. It's sort of like this kind of like peering into some weird wormhole or something where it's like these voices from the past are coming back through, and they're still relevant, and they're still so interesting, and so it was. I'm just really grateful that Rock Band gave me this opportunity to like go experience things like that, because it's like I just can't think of any other project or product that would enable something like that.
Cool. So some Rock Band specific questions. Do you have?
Never played it.
Do you have a band or genre of music that you've gained an appreciation for because of the game that you otherwise probably wouldn't have?
I think for me, with Rock Band, just in terms of like songs and discovering bands and things, like I remember this happened to me, and I think a lot of other people, like the band Boston, like I was like, I always like growing up with them, especially growing up in Boston, I was like, oh yeah, whatever, But then you play those songs, and like, oh my God, they're like so freaking epic, they're awesome. And just like singing the parts and like playing the parts are like, they're so much fun. And so I think that really kind of like turned me onto that band where I never thought I would really like be a fan, and then I think, I think for me, some of my favorite times with Rock Band have been, I think like my favorite times like playing Rock Band has actually been playing like Beatles Rock Band, and playing when you have people that are like really good singers. And so having people like who can actually sing, that are like singing in harmony with you, that's awesome, And so that's actually something we did during the development of Beatles Rock Band, where we'd be all kind of like totally burnt out, and then a small group of us would be like, all right, let's just go play what we built so far. And so we go into our Star Chamber here is where we do all our playing. And so we go in there around like 7 o'clock at night or something, and just start playing these Beatles songs, and singing in harmony together. And it was great. It was like so just like soothing, and it kind of gave you enough energy to be like, all right, I'll come back tomorrow morning and keep working, Let's see, how much have Alex and Iran changed since Rock Band was released? Well, I think one thing is like, anytime I see Alex on Xbox Live, he's always playing Rock Band, like always. So he's a what I would call a Rock Band enthusiast. But I think I don't know. Those guys have always been like super musical dudes, you know, and I think that they're also very competitive dudes, and so I've seen lots of you know, sort of battles over the years, not so much against one another, but them versus other people, and that's been fun to watch, you know. And I think I'm sure, have gotten a greater appreciation for, you know, the bands that we feature in our games, and you know, especially Ron, who's like a, you know, classical clarinetist dude. You know, I think he is really. I've sort of seen him be, I think, like, just grow that part of his musical brain over the years. You know, he's right there playing Rock Band next to us, you know, where, you know, I never once really questioned, like, oh, is this really a Ron's thing, you know, because he's really way more into classical music, but no, he's rocking out right next to us. So.
A lot of places, if they had Alex and Ron, people were in their shoes, they would just moved on. I guess, like, you guys have experienced so much success, so I'm curious to hear from everybody, like, there's something that keeps you here that you can't get anywhere else. Just curious what that is for you.
I don't know. I think people stick around at Harmonix because there's just like, there's more stuff to do, you know, and I think we all have this sort of driving passion that, like, it's like, all right, we created this thing and it was really cool and we had a lot of fun doing it, but it's like, we can do more, you know, there's more things out there that we can do, you know, and like, let's keep pushing, let's keep finding like new things that like challenge us, but also will bring like new experiences to players, you know. And I think kind of once you're able to like make something that I think touches people the way that like Rock Band does, that's like a pretty addictive thing, you know. And it's like, oh, I want to like figure out how will I just bring like more joy to people. And I think that like the things that we make at Harmonix just like bring so much joy to the world, you know, that like it's like, why would you want to stop doing that?